I'm Natalia Bonner. Welcome back. Happy Monday, whatever you want to say. I am so excited to be here again today and share a really fun background filler. I'm actually using this design in my borders and my sashing on this really fun new class sample. So if you've been following along with me all year through 2022, I've been crazy and I've been creating like there's no tomorrow. So every single month throughout this whole year, I have launched a brand new class. These are fun, fast classes where in each class I teach you 12 different ways to machine quilt one particular quilt block. So coming August 1st, I have my next brand new class, Let's Stitch a Churn Dash. I love a churn dash. It's just one of those classic quilt blocks that I can't get enough of. So in this fun class, I'm going to be teaching you 12 different ways to machine quilt a churn dash quilt. You can find all the details and join this fun class over on our website, peaceandquilt.com. Okay, what are we working on today though? The background filler or the borders and sashing. The reason I'm telling you about the churn dash class is because that's what I'm quilting this design here on. So this is, in the background, you're going to see that churn dash sampler. That's what is going on here. So a few tips or tricks, whatever you want to call it, products that I'm using before we actually hop over to my machine and get stitching. I'm going to be using, obviously here, my Gamble 22-inch machine. This is hand-guided quilting. I am stitching in the stitch regulated mode with my stitch length set at 13 stitches per inch. Now, if you are going to do ruler work like I'm doing here, you need to make sure you have a ruler foot on your machine. Whether you're working on a sit-down machine, like a domestic machine, or a long arm machine, a ruler foot is number one. I also have an extended base plate on my machine under so that I have a nice flat working surface. So when you view this here, you're going to see that my quilt looks really tight and really flat. It's because I have that extended base plate on my machine. The next thing that I'm going to be using, my 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler with our Peace and Quilt Pop Socket ruler grip. It's a fabulous ruler for machine quilting, again, on domestic or long arms, and it's really going to be the trick to keeping my lines nice and evenly spaced. I'm quilting here on a panel, so like I've already mentioned, this is for my next class, but this is actually a panel. You can pick up a panel from honestfabrics.com. If you're interested, just search my name, Natalia Bonner, on their website and you'll find this fun churn dash panel. The batting that I'm using here is one layer of the Quilter's Dream Poly Deluxe. I love the loft and texture of that batting, so that's what you're going to see. Now, you're really going to see a lot of texture and dimension though, because I am using the So Fine celery thread. So this is a really nice green thread that's going to stand out. High contrast thread is a little bit scary to use in the beginning, but sometimes just the extra effect that it creates is worth it. It's so awesome. Then in my bobbin, I'm going to be using bottom line color number 624. I know some of you are thinking I'm crazy because I'm not matching top and bottom. Most of the time I do match, but on this quilt, I'm not matching. Make sure your tension is set up nice and you can get away with using a different thread color top and bottom. All right, friends, enough chatting. Let's hop over to the machine and let's get stitching. All right, let's start out with a few fun images of this background filler and quilt after all of my quilting is complete. So really one of the huge reasons why you see so much texture here is because of the batting that I'm using, the Quilter's Dream Poly Deluxe, and that So Fine celery thread. There's something about using just a slightly off color. Actually, this is pretty off color, but if you use a color that's slightly off, it'll help create the look of a lot more texture. So one little tip, when I'm quilting a quilt with like a black background, sometimes I'll actually use a gray thread so that you can see my quilting a little bit more. All right, let's start quilting. So with a design like this, one of the biggest key elements in getting the design right and making it look cool is being really random and making your spacing all evenly spaced a 1/2 inch apart. So you're going to want to use the 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, and you're going to be using the measurements on that ruler. Now I like to use this ruler versus one of the other ones because the length on it fits really nicely. The trailer ruler would be another great option for this because there are some places where my lines are really long. If you're working on a domestic machine, you might find that a smaller ruler, like the mini 4-in-1, fits your machine a little bit better. In that case, you may have to do a little bit more marking or adjusting. Okay, so I do all my quilting working from left to right. You're viewing this here as if you're standing kind of towards the back of my machine, maybe at about a 45-degree angle behind my machine. I like to kind of think about making triangles and then filling those triangles in with evenly spaced lines that are 1/2 inch apart. To get that 1/2 inch spacing, I'll line up that first marked line on my 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler on my previous stitch line. So that 1/2 inch line will lie right on top of my stitching. And then I'll stitch a straight line, travel along my ditch, or in this case, along the outside of the quilt, and repeat that process, filling in my spaces. Okay, so this is a point where there really are no rules. There's no rules about any angles that I'm quilting here. There are no rules about the size of the triangles, and even in some places I'm not even creating triangles. I'm kind of creating straight line sections. Now as I quilt a design like this, I am most comfortable holding my machine quilting ruler towards the left side of my foot or towards the front of my foot or the right side. It becomes a little bit more difficult, and you'll find this the more that you do machine quilting with rulers. It becomes a little bit more challenging to see the lines that you're quilting, but also to hold your ruler if you're trying to hold your ruler behind your foot. So that's really something that helps me to decide the shapes or the spaces that I'm going to quilt. So you'll notice how often I'll start at the bottom or on the left side somewhere, which appears on the screen here to be the bottom or kind of the right side. But I'll start there and push away. Now, when I travel along my previous stitch line, because I am using a high contrast thread, I want to make sure that I kind of slow down a little bit and stitch right along that stitch line as best as I can. Sometimes when I'm stitching these straight lines and creating that evenly spaced 1/2 inch, I might stitch a little bit too far. In that case, you'll see that I'll take a few steps back. All right, let's move on and create this triangle right here. So you'll see that because I want the lines to fill in, actually working towards me, I found that it was easiest on this particular triangle to define my space and then start filling in from there with those evenly spaced 1/2 inch lines. You'll see that I quilted a few lines and then alternated directions just slightly and then started adding echo lines that are all evenly spaced a 1/2 inch apart. Now I am quilting here on a panel, so this is the class sample for my new Churn Dash class. This sample is a custom printed panel, and the outside edge of this panel does have a nice little hem along the outside, so that's why I'm not actually quilting to the complete outside of the quilt. If this were an actual quilt, a pieced quilt, I would stitch right out to that very outside edge. So continuing on, I'm starting on a new set of those evenly spaced lines. You'll see how I'll start out with just another new angle. So don't feel like you always have to go at a 45-degree angle or anything like that. Just lay your ruler on there and go for it. Stitch a few lines that are evenly spaced and then continue on. Now on this design, because I am using it in my borders and sashing, you'll see as I approach the sashing, the space between my blocks, there will be some points where my stitching is actually going to run a little ways down that sashing. And I'm okay with that because by running it down that sashing just a little bit, it actually makes it look like it all blends together nicely. This next triangle that I'm working on, again, you can see that I started out by defining my space. I wanted to create that angle, so I knew that it would be most comfortable to hold my ruler if I defined my space first and then pushed away from my body. You'll often hear me say that. I like to push the ruler away. What does that mean? It's more comfortable to hold the ruler towards my body and push back towards the throat of the machine to get that nice look. So I'll continue on repeating that process, just creating fun spaces. Have fun with this design. It's not one that's intended to be difficult. There are no rules. Have fun with it and quilt a lot of wild straight lines. I hope you all found just a little bit of inspiration from today's fun little video tutorial. Now, you can find more information about this panel that I'm quilting on here. This is my class sample for my brand new class, Let's Stitch Churn Dash Quilt Blocks. In this new class, I'm teaching you 12 awesome ways to machine quilt a Churn Dash quilt block. You can find all the details plus register over on our website, peaceandquilt.com. Have a great day, everybody.